What percent am I feeling normal right now? Fucking
That's right,
zero,
Mr.
zero,
COVID.
fucking 0%, dude. Zero
0%.
percent, 0%. I'm good.
Oh
Godzilla
man.
-1 right now. Godzilla -1. I feel
All right. So
terrible.
you got COVID for the first time.
I mean,
How's
first time that I know. First time that I definitely know.
oh
I have felt like ill before this kind of way, and I have fucking I went to the test site centers, right? Like I got tests on at test sites, and I came back negative all the time. But I have been feeling like crap for like a solid week now. Since like Tuesday last week. Boom, positive.
mm,
Boom,
yeah.
positive. Boom, positive. Boom, positive. And I still fucking tested positive today. What the
You know what's
hell? I'm
impressive?
exhausted. I'm tired as hell
Every
right now.
time every time I've gotten COVID, I had a lot of coughs, and you're not coughing at all,
I feel
which
it,
is
but I was coughing. I definitely was coughing, but I can feel it. I feel it wanting to
yeah.
come out.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's so low. It's like I'm not gonna let it. But like I feel still a little bit congested even as well too, which is
Uh-huh.
crazy to me. I just can't
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
it, you know? But like I'm not achy, I'm not like anything. I don't have a headache anymore. I don't even have like brain fog necessarily or anything like that. I was worried. I think I lost my at least part of my like smell as well too, which was like fucked.
Oh, yeah.
So fucked for me. So fucked. I was like over here just like sniffing antiseptic wipes, being like, please let me smell the lemon in this. Because I was like, oh Jesus, you know? So
Yeah.
I also feel like at certain points I was like, wait, could I even fucking smell this at all anyway? Like, how much am I hyper analyzing into this? Like, was my smell even like that good? Like, so I don't
You're
know.
you're a food guy, so that probably affected your taste as well,
Dude,
right?
it's killed me. Yeah, well, taste, I don't know. Taste wasn't so much, but
Mm,
the fucking, yeah, if I can't smell food, are you kidding me? Dude, I'm
yeah.
fucking 220 pounds. I mean, food's like my thing, dude. Food's like my thing. Yeah, and I couldn't fucking figure it
Yeah.
out. I don't know. So I am trying to actually still, I'm just trying to get better so that I can, what day is it today? It's Wednesday. So I'm really hoping to actually just like go on a little weekend adventure in Bordeaux this weekend. And I haven't booked it yet, but when you're in Europe, flights are fucking cheap as shit. So I'm planning on just like hoping, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But €66 flights returned. So from Friday to Monday, I can fly for €66. And then,
Damn.
2 nights in a hotel, 2, 3 nights in a hotel. Hopefully, like get it like a hundo or a night cheaper, be great.
Mhm.
80. And then just like spend the time just kind of like walking around and go to a museum and just kind of like fuck around for a bit. I don't know,
Yeah.
just see what
Good deal.
happens. Um,
Yeah.
but tell me what we were actually talking about though.
Before we started, I was talking about how I saw Godzilla last night, and Godzilla was it's a pretty good movie. First off, it was significant. So this is Godzilla -1, not Godzilla versus Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, which is coming
Which
up
is coming,
next year.
which is definitely coming. That's a movie that is coming.
Yeah,
Absolutely, and
yeah.
it is
It's
Diddy
not that.
Kong,
Huh?
as you rightly put out. It is Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong will be in that movie for sure.
Yeah, and it's gonna make a lot of money. But the movie I'm talking about is Godzilla -1. It takes place after World War II, and it's a totally different take on the recent Godzillas. It's a much more serious one. It's a much more human grounded one. But the main thing we were talking about was Godzilla's beams in that are intense. It's super intense and it's extra intense because the movie is more subtle and then Godzilla pops up. It's not like Godzilla versus Kong where they're like literally getting into fights at all times.
two
So every
two
time he
people in a
shoots,
rubber
it's
suit
menacing.
just like hitting each other.
Oh, I wish. I wish. So, first off, we came to two questions that we're discussing after the movie. And the first one was, what is the best beam in a movie?
It's a great question.
My vote, yeah, yeah. My vote for number one beam is the Independence Day beam. It has historical significance. I don't think beams would even be where they are without Independence Day leading the way and showing us a whole new level of beam.
And this is the one that blows up the White House, right?
Yeah, yeah, it blows up the White House and then it also like shoots past the city and everyone's running from it.
So are we talking about, okay, because I had my answers, but I want to put some stakes in the ground for this, right? Because
Yeah,
what are we
yeah.
talking about here when we say best? Are we saying most impactful in a movie setting? Are we saying like visually as beautiful as possible? Are we
I
saying like, most destructive? Like what are we saying here?
I actually don't think there's going to be stakes. It's just personal opinion. When you think best beam, what do you think? I think that's all we had. It
Okay.
wasn't necessarily a debate. It's just explain what you think the best beam is
I do
in a
like
movie.
this beam. This beam is a good beam. I would only say that it feels a little written off because when in Independence Day, when your man goes and runs the fighter pilot, the plane
Mm.
into the thing, isn't the beam like going off or it's about to go
It
off?
is. It is.
Okay,
It is.
so it's like yeah, so I don't know, cool, very cool moment though, and it does blow up the fucking White House, so that was a huge thing. I went and said Marvel's like beams when it comes to Thor in Ragnarok, but because I really like the Technicolor, I think the Technicolor is awesome. I think they look like cool
I agree.
beams, but I did have a distinction. 2001 a Space Odyssey. I think if we're talking about beam coming at you, still a beam is the coolest beam, and I don't know if there's a better, cooler beam for all my for all my acid
Yeah.
heads out there. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a pretty damn cool beam.
That's a very extended beam. That's likely the longest beam shot in any
It's
movie.
it's a
It is so
pretty
long.
long one. It's a pretty long one.
Yeah, so it's a whole scene in itself. So that's fair.
It's funny, yeah, because the way you say it, directed energy wise, like they are pretty quick beams. There's some great beams though. I'm telling you. I'm just thinking about this right
Yeah.
now. Mission Impossible 2, the
Wait,
laser
wait, wait.
beams.
Where's there a laser beam? I can't remember.
Ethan
I
Hunt is breaking into some embassy to steal some data and has to go and come down through the
yeah.
ceiling, and all of the beams are
Oh
all
yeah.
around him, and then he gets like right up in front of him, and it's like
Yeah.
right on his eyes, and he starts like sweating, and the sweat almost
Yeah.
falls into the beam. Like those are cool. I mean, those are straight laser beams, but the way that they kind of hyper detailed into the beam, kind of cool
Yeah.
beams. Um,
That was a debate, by the way, because somebody brought up the Resident Evil laser grid scene. I don't know if you saw the movie,
ooh,
but there's a laser grid, and then
yes,
somebody cried foul. He's like, yellow card. That's a laser, not a beam. And the
a laser beam
definition.
is a laser beam. What are we talking about here, dude?
Okay, I'll just say what the agreement was, which was
I will fight
a
somebody in
laser.
the parking lot for this.
The laser is smaller while the beam is larger in proportion to the person. It was kind of the the working definition for that talk.
Really?
So yeah,
A beam? So it's got to be big?
yes.
Because I was gonna say, shout out again, another Will Smith movie, but um, Men in Black when he shoots the
Yeah, the
cricket.
cricket. Okay, yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
it's tiny, but it
yeah,
blows up a car and launches it
yeah,
20
yeah,
feet in the
yeah,
air.
yeah. I think the projectile is large, so I think that would count. I think that would count.
I thought the whole point was
And-
the projectile was small. It was like very,
oh, was it? Oh,
yeah, because it's like
it
a
might have been. It's been a while.
tiny little gun thing that just
Yeah,
blows up a
yeah.
car.
That's an interesting one.
I don't know.
Um, I'll give
Comment
one
your favorite
more like
beams down below.
I'll give one more like movie slash show one before we move on to the second question, which
Okay.
is games,
Oh,
beams
no.
and games.
I don't like
I think
games.
that's a harder question actually. Um, so this beam has a narrative component to it, which is why I makes it like number two for me. So in Dragon Ball Z, Gohan as a teen is fighting against Cell, and they both shoot big ass beams at each other. Cell Cell's beam is stronger, so the beam is starting to move closer and closer to Gohan, and Gohan's losing with his Kamehameha. And then Goku, who is dead, comes down from the heavens as his dead dad, and then helps him as a ghost, basically double fire this Kamehameha to destroy Cell. So that was
Cheating.
a
Some might
very
say cheating.
yeah, a little bit of cheating, 2v1.
No, I like that.
Do you have any? Yeah, yeah. Do you have any final movie ones before we move on to the games?
Ah,
Because there's a lot.
Jesus.
You're
There's
right.
so
There's a
many.
lot.
There's just so many. Um, there's so many. But I can't even. Oh, yeah. Star Wars. Are you kidding me? Planet
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
blows up a fucking planet. That beam looks
yeah,
very
yeah.
small as well too, but I bet it's quite large. But it's a laser beam, none the goddamn less.
It was cool because if I'm remembering right, because the Death Star shoots multiple beams,
Yeah.
which then forms into a super beam and then goes out. So
The sound that it has, like before it goes off, is such impending doom. Where it's just
yeah.
usually things sound like that they're powering up, but somehow for whatever reason they chose the distinction to make it sound like it was powering down, like
Oh, nice.
it just fucking
Yeah.
pops the whole thing, pops it all.
There you go. So we're gonna make this episode, I guess, about visual effects. Maybe, who knows?
Who knows?
So now here's the question that I think is a little harder. And what is the best beam in a game? Like, what is a game where you shoot it and you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. And it,
Video game. Oh
I-
my god.
I only have one.
Okay.
And I can throw it out while you think. So in the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and maybe we'll link this in the show notes, but the Marvel vs. Capcom game, Iron Man says proton cannon, and then he shoots a beam that literally takes up the entire screen, or almost the entire screen, and shoots it full screen. And it's a cool effect. This is the nice like PS1 era like sprite graphics, so it was already well done. And at the time, I hadn't seen anything like that. Games were much more subdued back then, so to see this full screen beam just being shot out, I was like, that's the absolute first thing I think of when I think of a
Fun.
game beam.
That's a pretty impactful beam. When did that one come out? That's old arcade
probably
games,
like
right?
2000, maybe 2001.
Okay, 2000, 2001.
Yeah, or 99.
I'm trying to think if I remember it. Like in my head, I feel like I see it, but I also feel like I don't see it at all.
Yeah, actually, I can probably bring it up. So while you think of yours.
I mean, yeah, this is the problem. I have a fucking beam in my head, but I also don't have a beam in my head. I mean, stupidly, my brain still goes to lightsabers. Because especially in video games, a lightsaber feels like a hard thing to pull off, like in a video game. But there's something about them that, you know, when they're done right, like it used to be like, especially in, you know, the start of YouTube days, was like one of your first things in VFX land that people would look up tutorials on how to do, which was like how to make a lightsaber, you know. And a big part of it was because you had to have keyframing, you had to have some rotoscoping, you had to be able to track objects. And this is when kids were like first cracking, you know, CS2 and CS3 Adobe After Effects software. And I think a lot of people like started, you know, learning and getting into that industry through lightsabers, like you know, and YouTube tutorials when YouTube just had like 10-minute limits and everything else like that. But
have you ever done it yourself, lightsaber?
Oh yeah, I've tried.
I've done it, and it took me forever because I did it frame by frame. I don't know if there's a better way, but
I learned node tracking in After Effects, but then in Sony Vegas, you didn't have any of that, so I would have to do it frame by frame and start moving things. I was like, this kind of sucks. So especially when you have to, then you learn like, oh, I got to put motion blur on this, and we got to like figure out shadows, and I'm like, all right. That's why I think I realized that this job is not for me.
I'm gonna show the proton cannon one real quick. It looks like
Oh
this.
yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
it's just gigantic and magnificent.
That was a fun game.
Yeah, yeah. So it still looks good. I mean, from '99 or whatever, it's just sprite work, and they knew how to do it back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it felt like there was a lot of animation cues within that game. Like, you
Yeah.
know, there was like a time where they like took sprite to be like as far as it could go. Where it's like, all
Mm,
right, well, we're making
exactly.
128 frames for this one fucking animation. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
maybe we should just build it. Like, like when should
yeah.
we start making it in 3D and
And
rendering the
now,
thing out?
yeah, with 2D art, yeah, it was at certainly a height in the '90s, and then it took a big dip as everyone went to 3D. And now there's sort of a revival, and there are definitely some beautiful 2D games. But I still feel like I don't know if like nobody stopped to do 3D and they just kept perfecting this art. Man, we would have
Yeah.
been so much further.
Best beams.
Oh yeah,
Half-Life 1.
which one?
At the very start of the game when you're putting the anomalous material into in the test chamber and the beams start going
What?
out and then you end up ripping open a portal to a different land. Yeah, I think that was
Nice.
a pretty good
Okay.
beam. It was a pretty good beam. You just
Okay.
showed
Even
up
with the
for
tech
work.
back then.
Huh?
Do you think it stands the test of time, or do you think the tech limits it?
Oh no. I'm just saying
It's
I
okay
think
if it doesn't. It's
all right,
okay if it doesn't.
visually it's not that great of a
Yeah,
beam.
yeah, that's
Visually it's
fair.
not that great of a beam. I'm with
Sure,
you
sure.
there. But as impactful of a beam, I think it's a pretty impactful beam.
Okay, yeah. Similar to Space Odyssey in that way.
Fuck you. Yeah. um, I want to say that Titanfall 2 had some really cool beamage. Um, do you know what's my favorite one? Okay,
Which one?
I'll give you one from video games. Any gold beam in a Diablo game.
Wait, why does
Any
that have to be golden?
any golden light beam that comes off of an item
Oh,
in a
yeah,
in a
yeah, like a
Diablo
warp.
game is a
Yeah.
great beam. I'm okay with those
Oh, that's
beams.
interesting.
Those are good beams in a video game. It's not the
Yeah.
same. I know it's not what you're looking for, but
No,
it's a
no,
pretty
no.
good beam.
I definitely understand though. I understand.
I mean, oh, Quake, right?
The
You got
railgun or
yeah,
something?
you got two, right? You got the railgun, right? But you also got just like the constant beam that you had to track aim onto people.
Yeah,
I can't remember. It's like 3 or 4 on your keyboard. I don't remember the name of the thing. I thought it was literally just like the laser beam or something like that, beam gun or
yeah.
something. Um,
The railgun is a really good candidate.
yeah,
I think it's I mean, now that you said it, that's got to be top five for me because it feels super satisfying to land too.
so
In addition to
satisfying
everything else, yeah,
when you
that's a
just
really good candidate.
insta gib somebody. Like I played so many hours of just one shot servers of just that's all you
Yeah,
had. You just had that one weapon and you just shot people with it, and it was just like if I see you and I click on you, I win. And there
yeah,
was a little bit of dodging if you were good enough, but yeah, no, that was absolute the satisfaction that you would get from getting somebody who's insane.
yeah. I think I'd put that top three for now,
It's
without knowing any other candidates. It's probably top three.
I mean, it's funny, like when because if you think about it, like that thing didn't really even have necessarily a VFX component to it. It was just like I click, I
Yeah,
kill, and somehow like some things like that initiate like large damage, like in your brain, where you're just like, oh,
yeah,
especially in a shooter, it's like that's the most satisfying thing. So I didn't have to shoot you 10 million times. I just had to shoot you one time.
yeah.
There's
Now,
something
did the
crazy about
Quake
that.
railgun always look the same throughout the Quakes? I know in Quake 2 it kind of had like a spiral effect, but I don't know if they kept changing it or anything.
The functionality was always necessarily the same, but it didn't always look the same. Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah. And, they different companies took over the franchise over the years, right? Id didn't take it on. Ravensoft had it for a long period of time as well too, right? Like
Yeah,
Quake 3, Quake 4 and stuff like that. So it's who knows? It's been all over the place. Then Quake Live, like
yeah.
bringing back the best version of Quake, but it
That's a
is what
little
it is.
bit relate similar to Godzilla. So Godzilla always has his breath ray, but is different depending on each one. And then in Godzilla minus one, this is maybe a light spoiler, so close your ears for the next 10 seconds if you plan on it. But it's basically a nuclear explosion. It whips out, and there goes the city. It's like terrifying how they implement it in this one.
I mean,
So
it shouldn't be a spoiler if you know Godzilla by itself, because yeah, it was
yeah,
a radiation death cannon. Is like
yeah,
what it
yeah,
was from the start, but it cost too much to show you the destruction. So
yeah. You
you would see him just go just shoot it
yeah,
out, uh, but you
yo,
wouldn't
the
necessarily
sound effects.
yeah, but you wouldn't necessarily see anything. You just see people from very far away screaming like Godzilla and pointing, but if they got that like as terrifying as it should be, because it's supposed to be an
Yeah.
extremely impactful thing, then yeah, then we're talking about a couple of square blocks per thing.
So that's one thing. So in the movies we talked about, there's
Hmm.
a lot of anticipation, and animation 101 is make sure you have some kind of anticipation to help the sell to help sell the effect. A lot of the game beams we just mentioned, they come out instantly because you don't necessarily want your beam to come out super slow. And in Godzilla, it takes them sometimes almost a full minute to wind up the charge, so it builds up the anticipation.
Oh, really?
Um, are there? Yeah, yeah. Are there any? I don't know if there's any good beams in games that even have anticipation. Off the top of my head, I mean, usually it's you fire it, so there's no expectation. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I feel like that there's definitely. Oh, why am I? How did we not even come up with this? I love you. I love you so much. Sometimes Halo 3.
Which one?
We had the laser beam from Halo 3, the over-the-shoulder cannon. I can't
Was
even
it
remember what
Spartan laser
Spartan
or?
laser. Yeah, exactly. The Spartan laser. The Spartan laser had a
That's,
wind up to it. Um and it was one of the most like beloved things because there was achievements that you had to go and try to snipe 3 people with one hit of it. And it had a
oh,
wind up.
that's funny.
Yeah, it was one of the most fun, part of like my childhood, but also like my gaming career, I guess, if you want to put it that way,
Yeah,
was getting every achievement, every multiplayer achievement in that game. And it was difficult.
nice.
Like it was like there was like some really difficult achievements in that game. Um
Hmm.
but getting a triple kill with the Spartan laser legitimately was difficult.
Yeah. Looking for a GIF, and I will
Dude, yeah.
share it.
Get some FPS Walshy. I think that's what it is. It's like montages. I'd love to see a Halo 3 montage right
Yeah.
now.
It is.
Just break me down. Yeah, like bury me. Like just bring back like 2000s emo music. Oh, that's some bullshit. What the hell? That's a bullshit laser. Where's the real Half-Life or Halo 3?
Okay, yeah. So, okay, I actually don't know what the Spartan laser is.
Yeah, okay.
Is
Just
it is
just
not this one?
no, this is like the
Damn.
remake or whatever, and
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, so
Let me try
just
to find it.
find Half-Life 3 Spartan laser triple kill. Make sure it says triple
Oh,
kill.
wait. You said Half Life? You mean Halo?
Halo 3.
Okay, okay. Looking for it. Keep talking about it while, or I guess, yeah, you can probably find it on the phone earlier.
Ah, no,
Yep.
I'm looking up some
Oh
other
my bad.
stuff.
Yep, I was Halo 1 and Halo 2, but I missed out on 3. All right, I might be. I'm sharing it now. Bring me up in a second. Here we go. Is this the proper? Is that the proper Spartan laser?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice. Okay.
You
Yeah.
found just some yeah somebody taking on some stuff. Uh.
No, that's a good point with the wind up. Like in terms of other wind up, like for example in Monster Hunter, the gigantic sword has a massive like 2 second wind up and it makes it feel that much more impactful. So
I mean, they definitely try to make certain things. They try to make them clunky. I actually, in a funny way, really talking about like the opposites of everything, right? You know, big lasers that are really fast. I think are very interesting too. That are just you know what I mean. But the reason half of the reason why we do wind ups is the fucking get in video games or movies or like in stories or whatever is just to kind of give the protagonist like time to stop it. It's like never a moment where we can just
yeah,
go like, hey, like I'm just gonna
yeah,
blow. I'm not gonna tell you what I'm gonna do, but I'm just gonna blow that thing up, and then you're like, hey, like you didn't even give me time to go and look. That's what I want to see in a video game. Can I get a antagonist that just blows shit up, and then the protagonist is just like, hey, you didn't even give me a chance to stop you. It's like, yeah, duh, like duh, dude. Why would I? What the fuck are you talking about? Like,
Actually, I'll link a related one to that. I'm sorry. Finish your thought first.
no, I just feel like that I would love to see that. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a video test the Tesla cannon from Fallout 3, which
Tesla.
and
Oh,
and also I guess from Fallout 3, the alien laser gun. Um, you can find an alien pistol, and the pistol's great. How did I not think about this? Um, Call of Duty World at War Zombies, the laser pistol from that.
okay. I don't know if I can bring up all of these.
Oh,
I'm gonna start with one. I'm gonna start with the Tesla cannon.
okay.
Give me 1 second. All right, streaming the Tesla cannon. Well,
Jeez.
hopefully he gets to use it again. Oh, nice. Oh, he's gonna.
I mean,
Okay,
that
there's
feels like a railgun. I mean, it's
so
probably impactful,
this.
but
Yeah, yeah. Oh, nice explosion. So this isn't a beam, but it made me think about it because in the Tales of series, like Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Zisteria, they have this spell called Indignation. And basically the boss or whoever, when they're casting it, they chant the spell for like 10 seconds plus. They do this incantation. So um this is kind of what it's like. The boss starts chanting it at some point. Uh here we go. And then the whole time you're trying to knock him down and there's just a meme where it's like, oh god, he's winding up this spell. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, but he's still winding up. He's still giving his big ass speech, and then after a full minute, he finally rains down destruction on you. So that's a. It's not a beam; it's lightning, but it's the same idea as what you're saying.
damn, I love it. I love it. I mean, this is the thing is like a lot of these things are. It's funny how they all kind of coalesce around the same stuff, where it's like big impactful moment that is kind of like a definer for power, right? I don't
Yeah.
know why we always like. Well, I guess we. I mean, it's very obvious. I guess why this feels like that. There's like a lot of power involved. Um, in a lot of these different games, the dichotomy I guess goes back then to like for some reason Star Trek is not a part of that list, right? We didn't
No,
we
yeah,
didn't even call out the phaser as like a cool beam in TV and movies. Uh, you know, ion cannons in any either that or Star Trek, not or Star Wars or Star Trek was not cool enough for us to kind of call out. Like a lot of those things don't feel impactful, right? They look cool, but they don't feel impactful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's because there's movie tropes and TV tropes, but they don't necessarily like hit as much. But every example that we've kind of come up with all has this like devastating amount of power comparatively to it. So
Yeah.
how like laser products always convey their power seems really interesting because the Fallout one, you know, didn't have like a lot of cool flair to it. Like when it was outside of VATS, it wasn't really that interesting. And
Agreed. I agree.
but it was impactful. But in Quake, there's like almost like there's not like a whole lot of visual, but it's impactful, right? Um,
Mm.
so it's like we're always like playing into the same dynamics of it's impactful, but it doesn't necessarily have to have like a lot of visual flair, right around it.
Yeah.
It's usually a very quick weapon. So something that I'm, constantly talking with, um, the other designers I work with and stuff like that, which is like, what is the promise that something that you're building has towards the thing that you're trying to tell the player, right? So there's an innate promise and like there's two things, right? A promise and a premise. But the wants, if I tell you it's a laser beam gun and you're the player, you would instantly have like this idea of what that could mean and all of the attributes that that thing could have. And the moment that it doesn't meet your like the promise of what I'm telling you, like it's a laser beam gun, and your premise of what that means to you don't match and don't align, you have a goal mismatch. Something that you think is supposed to be this way and supposed to be fun is not actually at all what it is. You have this disconnect, and that disconnect builds friction, and that friction builds mistrust within your product, and that mistrust leads to bad reviews. And
Mm.
it's hard then to be like to tell a player, with gameplay and mid gameplay and be like, wait a minute, hold up, keep going, this is it, blah blah blah, because we don't have that. Players don't have that attention span when it comes down to like mobile or like small indie or whatever else like that too. So these are the things that like do matter. Is kind of mulling over, and it's of, hey, I'm gonna build this thing. Well, okay, where along the box of all of the things that have already done that is this supposed to align, right? So that you can
Yeah.
set the premise or set the promise correctly to the player and let them know up front, like, hey, it's going to be a little bit more like this rather than it's going to be a little bit more like this, right? So,
Yeah.
like, you know, quick firing weapons. Well, usually if the weapon is quick firing, it's probably smaller, right? Like the fastest kind of laser guns that you've probably ever seen in video games are much more like SMGs or smaller, compact. They look very sleek and like very thin, futuristic styles, but everything else that has that wind up is much more like feels like the Spartan cannon or the Tesla cannon,
Mm.
where it's like this thing has to charge for like 2 or 3 seconds. So like the size of the object builds into that idea of premise of how quick is this thing going to fire, how much damage is it going to do, how impactful it's going to be. And you know I think like that's where like knowing tropes as is weirdly like annoyingly important, and why kind of sometimes everything feels like everything else at the same time too. But
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's like if you're not building in that base somewhere, how many different ways and how many different times has somebody built a laser gun? So it's like, okay, well, you're gonna have to fight against that at some point, and fighting against that means friction, and friction you tends to mean bad reviews sometimes. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just a mismatch, so that if the player is playing some quick twitch, you know even single player game, right? And then they end up dying because the weapon didn't perform the way that they thought it would, or it doesn't match their expectations for their play style. Then all of those things can become huge problems, in tuning for sure.
Yeah, like a lot. Sometimes you really need to subvert expectations, but the thing is, if you're so what you said was you talked about mismatch, and yeah, mismatch. I don't know if all mismatches causes friction. If you under deliver, that certain people are like, oh well, that was a weak explosion for such a big beam or
Hmm.
whatever. But when you exceed the expectations, I think it's generally a positive reaction to it. Do you agree, or do you think any mismatch can be rough?
I mean, yeah, but you have to still beat their expectations. And
Yeah,
beating their expectations versus like changing their idea of what that expectation is, I think is different. Like
yeah,
if you surpass their expectations, well then you might have been already on the same track, or doing something that still feels good, right? And like that's good, that's fine. I think if you're building a weapon for a video game, like with just extensive content, or not extensive content, but with just extensive context, right? Um, any sort of new weapon that you give to a player should almost feel like a silk glove, like a lot of the time. Like whenever we pick up something, it should kind of like feel like it feels good in your hand and in your mouse. Like that's when people are like looking for like that weapon that works for them. It's like that's the thing that I'm looking for, is like what's the thing that feels like butter? It just feels silky smooth, right? And that is a matter of preference, and playstyle, but also it's the speed of the weapon, the sound effects for the weapon, the visual effects for the weapon, and how big that weapon actually is on screen. There was like a great like little video there that popped up on my YouTube that reminded me of some playtesting that happened for like um, I think it was like zombies or something like that. Maybe it was Call of Duty World at War, like one of the first ones. And it was like the MP40 versus the MP44. So like the German submachine gun versus like the American submachine gun, and it's like players were getting kills. They're literally the exact same stats. They had the exact same stats, same recoil, same everything, except for one sounded chunkier than the other, so it gave players more confidence in that weapon over the other one.
yeah,
So
I
everybody thought
believe
that
it.
the other one was underpowered relative to this one, but it was like they're the exact same weapon. They're
Mhm.
the exact same everything. So having that comparative base, or giving players like something that else that satisfied them more, like kind of sat them in a better headspace, like allowed them to role play in a little bit more, because it
Yeah.
just they felt more confident with that weapon. And it's
Y-
interesting how that
Oh,
happens.
yeah. I recently rewatched Dark Knight Rises, which
Oh,
is where
fun.
Batman fights Bane. And when they fight in the sewers, Batman does his punches and is doing these little tink 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 tinks, and then as if Bane immediately punches him back, and you just hear this big old thud. So it's very much the same thing. It's like that's how you sell power easily with sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. um but I don't know. There's just like there's loads of different things along those lines that really matter. But
Mhm.
it is funny that how like, well, I guess it's not really funny, but it is interesting like how the visual appeal, can really sell certain things like that. It's not necessarily about, if you think about like what we were talking about and going back to our the rubric of what was a good laser. It's like the impact never actually came down. We didn't really care that much about the impact so much. It was really just like kind of about what that laser beam looked like a lot of the time,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
I think so.
but not
Um,
about the
you
impact of
know,
the moment.
yeah, so you are an FPS guy, and I want to ask a more general question, which is, what is your favorite weapon or gun in any FPS?
Oh my gosh.
I I'll speak for others real quick. I think a lot of people would put the BFG from Doom up there, just because it's 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 not just the power of the weapon, but it has a lot of lore behind it as the strongest gun in the first big FPS or one of the first ones.
Sure,
So the
sure.
BFG is I'm sure is commonly up there, but for personal, I'd have to think a little bit about that myself.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like, my brain instantly goes to the AK from Counter Strike,
Hmm.
right? Like, if you're just
A lot of
talking
good
about,
memories with
oh
it.
my god, like I've spent, I've shot more digital rounds through that gun than I have on pretty much any other weapon of all time. You know,
Combined. Yeah, that's funny.
combined.
That's funny.
MP5 on Call of Duty 4, right? On the first Modern Warfare. That gun rips. It rips, right? And it feels so satisfying. It feels like you're shooting people with a fucking pea gun, but it just devastates people, and
Yeah.
the reactions that you get, just after smashing people constantly is hilarious. Um
Uh, I might be really simple minded, but off the top of my head, my answer might be the golden gun in GoldenEye, which is a one shot. It's a one shot pistol, but here's the significance about it: is that because it's a split screen multiplayer, so everyone can see this shiny gun, and they're like, "Hey, that guy has a golden gun," and they know you're a threat. They play differently because they know you have the golden gun, and hey, they might even gang up on you. So I think there's a lot of significance to that for me.
oh yeah. I think it's a great one. It's a great one for like the older gamer for sure. I didn't get that
Yeah.
chance, but it wasn't there for me. And I tried playing GoldenEye later on, and I'm like, how
Oh,
the fuck did anybody enjoy this? This is like the worst experience of
it is
all fucking
really
existence.
bad controls.
It
Yeah.
sucks. It really sucks. But like, this is the thing, I think, where people get stuck in eras, or at least I get stuck in eras, right? I'm completely dating myself, but I'm stuck here now because
Mm.
and Randy asked me this there, like, on Discord the other week, which was just like, what games do you like? And and he's right, because the thing is like, it's not that I don't like individual games. I just believe that when you're born and you get into something is when you start getting your affinity with that thing, and then everything relates back to those moments and to that game, and then everything becomes then like this lineage of everything else is derogatory or derivative of that time that you played in that experience. And because of those things, you get stuck in these linchpin places that are like the first time that you ever experienced something. So it's like, when's the first
Yeah.
time that you ever experienced an automatic rifle in a first person shooter game? Like a gun that just
Yeah.
shot multiple times at a second when you just mouse down, right? And when was those
Yeah.
moments that you had impactful times with those? Where it's like, okay, yeah, a lot of guns might feel like this, but everything always like lines back to that moment. And it's very hard to
Hmm.
have like unique serious gameplay things that like really change up that appearance after a while. Like little things like Borderlands has been out for forever right now, but there's like
Yeah.
so many different Borderlands. So it's like, how can I go and like play the newest Borderlands and then say, oh, this weapon's so cool? And like, yeah, it might be really cool, but then I'm taken back to when I kind of first engaged with the product back in Borderlands 1, and I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a weapon that was very similar that I had a better time playing with,
Yeah.
or like had an interesting time playing with. So it's like everything is rooted in something else. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like you can love individual pieces of things, but you don't always think like you're thinking like all the way down the track. So like, this is where I come back to, rocket launchers are in video games, FPS games all over the fucking shop, right? Loads of different
Hmm.
rocket launchers. But my favorite rocket launcher is still going to be Quake's.
Quake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Quake's rocket launcher, because it's the first time that I got to do rocket jumps. It's the first time that I
That's
got
fair.
to do like bouncing people around the place with rockets, right? Like I'll shoot it, like they're moving across the air. You're gonna shoot it over here, and then you're gonna shoot your second shot here, and you're gonna switch to your rail, and then just like bash them after that because you know that you're gonna knock them off like directionally because you'll have the knockback from the rocket. You can do that in TF2. You could do, but like, and people do that in TF2. It's the basis around the soldier. It wasn't when the game first came out. People had to discover that, and then they leaned into it more. But like little things like that then become things that you do later on. Same thing within Halo 3, right? Like, um, you still shot the rocket launcher in Halo 1, but I didn't have multiplayer until like Halo 3, so I didn't feel this so much in Halo 2. But you'd shoot a rocket at the ground. That would like blast people or do some damage, but then you might shoot it at the ground and then one over here, so that you can kind of cover people off and stuff like that. And it was the same kind of feeling, the same idea, the same strategic depth, but you only had two of them. You had two shots and not like a whole lot of knockback, so you had to be cautious and careful with it. So it was more about choke points and gaining loads of people in the same area and knowing when to use the thing. So um
You're definitely right that novelty matters a lot. And like especially with impactful memories. Because yeah, you're always those the first time you play certain genres are definitely going to have a strong impact on you and how you think about games and fun. And actually, I have an angle slash story that you'll never hear from anybody else because the first online FPS I ever played
mhm.
was Daikatana. And when I played that, I was like, yo, this game is amazing. I had a moment, I still remember it. It was like one of my first kills. I was on top of an elevator and somebody went into an elevator and I just like swooped down and then like surprise attacked them and killed them. And it was I was like, oh my god, I never had any sort of like experience like this before. So so I still remember that, and I thought fondly of Daikatana. Of course, Daikatana is also now one of the worst reviewed games of all time. It is not a great game, but because it was like one of my first modern FPS experiences, it was very good. Because I didn't play Counter Strike, I didn't play many
No,
uh,
but
F- PC
Daikatana
FPS.
had like a lot of did have like a lot of cool aspects to it though. Like it did have like
It
a
was
lot of,
bold.
yeah,
Yeah,
it did have
it
like a
was
lot of
Romero, regardless. So it had bold stuff in it. Yeah.
Sigil 2 is coming out. I was at Romero Games in Galway. I was outside. I took a picture.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I took a picture. I stood there for a hot minute, just being like, "It's lunchtime. Maybe they'll pop out. Maybe they'll walk
Nice.
out. Maybe they'll walk out right
Yeah,
now."
yeah. Yeah, Romero's a humble guy, especially nowadays. I don't know if he always was like that, but yeah, he had the reputation for being boisterous, I guess, back
Yeah,
then.
probably. It's probably some bullshit. I mean, there's some skeletons in his baths for sure, but I mean, it
Mhm,
is what
mhm.
it is. You pick and choose. If you're a successful rock star, nobody thinks about
Yeah.
you know, how much Jack Daniels you puked up on stage later on. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's just it's a nice, it's a nice overall discussion, right? Like,
Mhm.
there is just um there's just a lot of different things that we think about when we think about like one individual zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
um
when somebody says what is the best X, your whatever comes to your mind is it may not actually even be the best. It'll just be like the most like, oh my god, that shocked me sort of thing. That's
yeah,
why we often just said like one of the our earlier memories because like Marvel vs. Capcom from 1999 or whatever, but it still stood out. So
yeah, look, we're a product of our if we are a product of everything, all the experiences leading up to that, to this individual moment. That's why I really feel like that there's just every game by itself like doesn't do everything perfect, but we pull like little pieces from games and we're able to kind of like lineagely put those things together into like a chronologic history of everything, right? A chronological history of things. So if you just picked laser beams, you could absolutely go back and just pick like a fucking history of laser beams and probably see like real static relationships if you really studied it, like real relationships
Yeah.
between those beams, the visual effects, the audaciousness and everything, and start categorizing all of those things and then see the influences. Because that's
Yeah.
the, you know, it's not that that's the sad thing of everything else, it's just that that's just the truth of it, is that you know, history is a linear time, and everything ends up influencing everything else within a creative field. We're
Yeah.
constantly just like
And
re-referencing other things.
I like what you said about like how it's incremental, because innovation is incremental. Everything is like plus one, plus one, plus one, iterating off of each other. But let's say Godzilla beams. So each Godzilla beam evolves in a certain way. But if you only saw the first Godzilla and then the latest Godzilla, that's like a plus 100. So it's only when you're in that space scrutinizing it that you
Bring it up.
see each little iteration.
Bring it up.
But
Is there
to
a
go,
video of this? Come on, there's gotta be a
I
video of
don't.
this. Godzilla
I'll check
beams.
the trailer. I'll check the trailer.
No, just, is there like Godzilla beams throughout the ages?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. It does, but I really want to have the latest one in there. Maybe it's a spoiler. Yeah, there's definitely evolution of beams, but um, yeah, I guess you guys have to see the movie if you want to see the latest the one of the best implementations of beams currently. How are we doing on time? I feel like we're at like 50 or maybe an hour.
I mean, we're probably over. I gotta get back to work anyway. So
Oh, okay. Well,
here, I'll just
yeah,
I'll
that
just
is
send you
fine.
this. You know, just as like a visual comparison. This is all Godzilla's atomic
Okay.
breath from 1954 to 2001.
All right, cool. Let me bring this up real quick.
It's just a picture.
hmm Uh, let's see. Come on.
But it's also
Share.
just like, yeah, like different when different studios take on something. I mean, this is this is where I really like the idea. Like, I wish a different studio would just remake like the same game, like where like three studios would just remake the exact same game over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't know if you can make it any bigger at all, but
I can't. I tried. I really did try.
that's okay.
Or did
That's fine. It's whatever.
this one's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, that one's class. But you see, like the times when, you know, what I mean, that one there, like as a cartoon, right? Uh, feels like the time, or uh, fucking, what's the video game in arcades where uh
Rampage?
no, yeah, so yes, right, this is like, I guess was a point, Retro City Rampage, right? Like, has always been around. It's always been something I feel like that people really like. So it's why I feel like why Godzilla like still lasts. We also love the debates of like who would win in a fight, and I think that's why a lot of these movies come up right now. But
Yeah.
what I was gonna say is, there was the game in arcades where you had to get the decision right. You were in a castle running around. You had to go save the
Oh, Dragon's Lair,
Dragon's
maybe.
Lair. I
Dragon.
feel like
Yeah.
that's probably around the same time when Dragon's Lair came out.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
and I
so.
bet you that fire looks a lot like that fire from Dragon's Lair.
Mhm.
And I love the old Godzilla. That shit looks so good too. Fuck's sake.
So, a question I will field to all the viewers is, please comment what you think the best beam in a movie is, and also what the best beam in a game is.
Sure, I'll double down on that. I would love to hear what people's idea of longest running trope in a video game is. Like, is it rocket launcher? Like, what's their favorite one that's like throughout the ages, or is it like laser beam? Like, can you think of like 5 or 6 games that have all done like laser beams and just like like historically kind of influence and like line
Yeah,
on from each other? And they can be within the
yeah,
series, but I bet you'll find like a couple of games in your own. When was the first time I played with a laser beam versus like 10 years later? You know, you're still playing with laser beams. But yeah,
yeah.
that was cool. Thanks, Calvin. I'll talk to
Yep.
you later.
Good chat. Good game chat.